Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes, hotter than hot tasty pancakes, and I'm back! What's up, everybody? It's Christian Cudi, the real rightful host of Pop-O-Holics, reclaiming his throne on the Pop-O-Holics weekly upload for a date I do not have pulled up, and I'm very tired and my back hurts, so I'm not gonna look it up. I'm gonna mouth it, and the date is
April 11th, 2022.
It is today. Beautiful. Couldn't ask for a better team to put that together. That's the kind of synchronicity, that's the kind of words we make up, that's the kind of synchronicity that I bring back to the table. And we're back, baby. It's just me on this episode, nobody else. Pop-O-Holics, just Christian Cudi today. So what are we going to be diving into? Well, we're going to be doing Christian's Wacky News Corner. We're going to move on to Christian's Community Feedback, and then move into Christian's Quick Hit section. Oh, you know what? There's a couple other gentlemen that will be joining me today, and their names are
Chris Conkling, who was, I think, a decent substitute host.
An incredible substitute host. And Brian Dupree, who is doing very little work as usual.
Not true. Not true.
And Christian's very bad edits. Chris, sorry about that. It was like weird fading in and outs, transitions that are turned on for no reason. Anyway, we ran this.
We're figuring it out. We're figuring it out.
You know, we gotta
okay.
just brush off the kinks. We just gotta grease the wheel, grease the gears. We're Greer geesing. Greer
geesing. Getting back on the bike.
Hey, did you miss me? Did y'all miss me?
We did miss you. I think our audience missed you as well.
I had a kid. I had a child.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We saw him on last week's weekly upload. If you haven't already watched that, please go check that out.
Yes.
See Christian's new beautiful baby boy.
As a dad, I'm going to have a whole new perspective on pop culture. As a father, as someone fathering a child, I just feel more.
You became a dad?
I became a dad. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
3 whole weeks so far. And I got to say that I'm a pretty good dad. And I'm wiser, I'm more mature, and I'm generally better than you both now.
Oh,
okay.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, what do we do on the show? Well, this is a weekly upload, and we talk about the latest going-ons in pop culture. Brian has a very wacky news corner. It's just so wacky. I can't explain how wacky it is. It's just, and we learn all about the things coming out. It's a great way to catch up on stuff that's going to be on streaming services, in theaters, and potentially in your video game stores shelves. They have big boxes of software that you can purchase. We'll talk about some of that sometime. And then we move on into what the fuck do we do? I haven't been on the show. Quick hits, where we talk about what we've been consuming. We got a lot of great stuff. Brian is the only one who saw Morbius, which I'm jealous of. I would have probably caught it if I was able to sneak out to go to see a movie right now. But I have a newborn because I'm a dad. I don't know if I told you that. And I've been playing a couple of video games.
Breaking news.
I've been playing a couple of video games. One that came out towards the end of last year that I'm super pumped about. Metroid Dread and Tunic. And Chris watched some old nerd movie. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. And then we do community feedback, where we're going to talk about all the things going on in the Pop-O-Holics universe. So without further ado, let's kick things off the way that we do. With you guys are like, why are you the host? Why are you in charge of things? When Chris ran, it was smooth. It was like, hello, welcome to Pop-O-Holics. We will be talking about the news. We will talk about it. And let's go. Brian, what did you think about that? Ha! Anyway, I did too. Ha! And it was...
You bring a unique chaos energy that, frankly, Brian and I missed.
That's great. Chris, you're not the host anymore. Brian's Wacky News Corner. Let's get it going.
I definitely love having the jingles back. Welcome back to the Wacky News Corner, everyone. That is jingle personally made by Christian Cudi, our
viewers will never hear.
Yes. If you want to hear the jingles, until Chris gets off his ass and makes a proper animation. I just came back to share all my grievances and why I left the podcast and why I'm quitting next week. Chris, you need to make an animation to go along with... I told you to go to animation school. You still fucking slacking on that shit. You know, as a father, I still try to find time in my day-to-day to learn a new skill like I'll teach to my son.
To be better.
To be better. Anyway, Brian.
It'll happen at some point.
Well, Brian can deliver the news, and while he's doing that, why don't you YouTube some shit? I don't know. That's how I learn. Brian, what's going on?
An animation degree in the next like half hour or so.
All right, I'll see what I can do.
Stop slacking.
So our first news topic. HBO Max has just gone absolutely mad with extended universe power here. We've recently got announced shows for spinoffs from the Batman, one following the Penguin starring Colin Farrell, one about Arkham Asylum, both of which we've talked about. There's talk of an It prequel series. Susan Tekla-Kuglinska is on the show this Wednesday talking about The Witch. She was previously on to talk about when we covered the It and It Chapter 2 movies. Welcome to Derry is supposedly that show. Now we have Sherlock Holmes 3, the Robert Downey Jr. led Sherlock Holmes series that they've made 2 movies of, and the third movie has supposedly been in production for what seems like a decade at this point. They, in their boldness, it has been announced by someone, we haven't got official comment from them, that 2 shows are in development featuring characters that will be introduced in the third movie. So not only are these new shows, they're dependent on the third movie actually existing, which in itself seems like a Hail Mary at this point.
I'm not convinced.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure any of this exists. It seems like they're kind of leaking out news and seeing what catches, seeing what the internet responds to, and maybe judging it from there, which may not be a terrible marketing tactic. I really enjoyed both of the Downey Sherlock Holmes movies when they came out, but this was 2009 and 2011. So it's literally been over a decade since the last of these movies come out. Very much past the hype train, having left the station here. But how do you guys feel about the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies and the potential for some spin-offs in the third movie eventually actually coming out?
Brian, I too really enjoyed those first 2 Sherlock Holmes movies, but this movie, Sherlock Holmes 3, was supposed to come out in 2020, and yet we never heard anything about it being in production prior to that release date. And then obviously the pandemic, and it got pushed to 2021, and that date passed, and we still don't have a Sherlock Holmes 3. And now it's supposed to come out this year, and there's still no word on it being in production. It's like this mystery production that's been taking place for Sherlock Holmes 3. It honestly doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I doubt that this movie even exists based on all of that. But it's so weird that HBO, Warner Brothers, would just be like, oh yeah, and we're going to release these 2 spin-off shows for this movie that may or may not exist. I would like to see another Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr. I think he was a great Sherlock Holmes. We've gotten several Sherlock Holmes versions within the last 15 years with Benedict Cumberbatch playing Sherlock on the BBC series. But yeah, this is just seemingly kind of like a really weird choice. I definitely think you might be onto something, that HBO and Warner Brothers are kind of like feeling it out and testing the waters here. But can we please get some proof that Sherlock Holmes 3 exists prior to promoting these spin-off shows?
And they're not promoting them at this point. Like I said, they haven't given
It's a rumor. Comment. It's a rumor. Yeah, you're right.
There's sources, but they're not named sources, so it could be nothing. But it could also be that, like the Coen brothers with Barton Fink, they're waiting for John Turturro to age into the role for old Barton Fink. So maybe we're getting an old Holmes, waiting for RDJ to age up a little bit more, and then he'll be ready to bring the next generation that will have their spin-off movies or spin-off series. Christian, how are you feeling about this?
I could care less. I don't feel this way about many properties. I try to watch a lot of stuff, and generally Robert Downey and Guy Ritchie, very entertaining. I've started the first Sherlock Holmes movie no less than 3 or 4 times, and about 15 minutes in, when bullet time starts happening and Sherlock Holmes is like kicking people's asses, I was like, this movie sucks. I hate this movie.
He's in the middle of like a brawl, isn't he? Like,
and he's like, it's like Sherlock Holmes is so smart, he'll know where to punch people. Like,
it's like mathematically calculating and
it's not
going off of there.
It's so dumb. The movies, I hate them.
Ouch.
I'm not saying I haven't seen enough of them to tell you an opinion of them, other than 15 minutes into the first one and 10 minutes into the second one. I've multiple times said, not for me. If you love those movies, great. Robert Downey's super talented. It looks good. Like, it's a good looking flick. It moves with a pace. Very entertaining. I love movies. It's so strange, but that Robert Downey Sherlock movie, I love everybody involved. I just am like, don't buy it. I don't like it. I don't know what to tell you. So I could give a shit, and it's probably not going to happen, or whatever. What's the internet fandom for like? Oh, dude, I fucking love those Sherlock Holmes movies. Like, give us the extended universe of the Sherlock Holmes character. It doesn't exist. It's a bunch of horse shit. If they're trying to raise fandom, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of love for those movies. We'll see.
They just got to do a trailer where Downey comes back through a portal to meet Watson, and
then he meets the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes in contemporary times, because the Robert Downey Sherlock was a period piece. So, oh my God, Brian, we're doing things here.
Worlds collide.
You know what I would love to see, in the same vein as that action set piece where he's like, this is where the femoral artery is, and if I hit it with about 30 millimeters of precision to the interior jawbone. Like, no one thinks like that in a fight. This movie fucking stupid. Like, no matter how smart you are, you can't slow time and then explain how the body works while
honestly, I think you're being a bit harsh looking back on this. When this movie came out, it felt kind of fresh, even with being like a decade after bullet time. There was something cool with these action set pieces.
Also,
Guy Ritchie's style,
for those
is just
unaware, Sherlock Holmes is always on a shit ton of drugs. So,
well, fair.
I mean, the bullet time is drug induced, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a stylistic choice of like the whole scene, but maybe Robert Downey turns towards the camera and explains it, and it's like, oh, we're not actually in reality, but the way it tries to sell it on how smart he is in the middle of a fight, I don't know. But and Guy Ritchie's style is just very like Guy Ritchie, right? And I love what do you do? Snatch and Smoking Two Barrels or whatever the fuck. He did a bunch of shit that's really great. I love all that stuff. It's just like that was like the 8th Guy Ritchie movie I'd seen, and I was like, I'm good. All that being said, though, you know what I'd love? I'd love that entire scene, same process, but Sherlock Holmes is taking a piss at a public urinal, and he's trying to figure out how to, you ever pee and you're trying to figure out how to clean the toilet while you're peeing? You ever think of this? Where you're like, I could clean the toilet with my pee, and he's like talking about like what he drank during the day to make his piss optimally good for getting residue off of urinals, and like the science behind the liquid that's in it and the concoction that mixes with your pee and the amount of force that you have to have, the amount of pressure that you need to pee to actually deliver that, and what that contents of that would be created for, and kind of the gamble he's taking of like, well, if the person had quite a high sugar diet, then it might be impossible to remove with my piss stream, no matter how well I calculated out my beverages and diet for the past week to try to achieve this. And that puck was manufactured by Winston and Sons, and they dilute their material so that they have to replace the cups more often. And I would be so down for that.
Did you get a copy of the Sherlock Holmes 3 script?
That's the trailer.
Because
that's just the trailer.
He's just a serial urinal cleaner hired by the city.
Watson's like, but why, sir? Don't you just bring a brush if you want it to be clean? He's like, that's not the point. It's about the game. Dear boy.
The game's afoot.
Wow. Well, that's some potential spin-offs from the probably non-existent Sherlock Holmes 3 from Team Downey. So that may be a thing that comes at some point. If anything ever gets into production, we will bring this up again and let you guys know. The next piece of news. So I just saw Kid Cudi in Ty West's new movie. He's been trying to break into acting for a little while, has an animated series on the way, I believe, that he was involved in. And he's now been tapped to join the latest John Woo action thriller called Silent Night. So Joel Kinnaman is the lead in this, and it follows a father on a mission to avenge his young son who was tragically caught in the crossfire of gang violence on Christmas Eve. Shot and nearly killed while in pursuit of the murderers, Godlock vows to avenge his son by any means necessary. So Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi, is going to be playing a detective named Dennis Vassell. And yeah, I thought he did a really great job in X. I thought the whole cast is very much an ensemble piece. I talked about it a few weeks ago when I saw that. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year, I'd say, and he was quite good in it. I'm excited to see him getting more roles here, and this is kind of maybe sort of a straight man role as a detective. I'm not sure if he'll actually have some real action set pieces here, but I've followed Kid Cudi for a long time. His music, and one of his first very minor roles was in the Entourage movie, a show that I never really watched front to back, but I did see that movie for some reason, and it's not a great movie, but I was happy to see him in it in a small role. Are you guys fans of John Woo at all? Would you see this movie? Fans of Kid Cudi? How do you feel about him being cast in Silent Night?
I love Kid Cudi as a musician. The only thing I've seen him in is Don't Look Up, but I know, like you just mentioned, you recently saw X. I haven't seen X, but I'm happy for anybody that wants to try and break into acting, and it seems like so far he's getting a lot of gigs, so that's great news. I'm interested to see him in this film.
I wasn't trying to adjust my chair or anything for my grueling back problems. Yeah, I don't. When I think John Woo, I think Kid Cudi. So I think it's a match made in heaven. Can't wait to see it.
Ouch. Well, that's that. Kid Cudi cast in the latest.
It's so crazy. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll be amazing. I'm not gonna knock it.
No, I hope so. I hope it's good. So yeah, that's Kid Cudi starring alongside Joel Kinnaman in the latest John Woo movie, Silent Night. So we'll definitely let you know when that comes out. It's probably going to be sometime next year at this point. Moving into some stuff that's coming out this week, starting out with
Stoner stars in Silent Night.
I don't think that's gonna be in this movie, but maybe they'll incorporate some Cudi tunes.
Best original
to go along with it.
Best original song, Kid Cudi for Silent Night, and it's just that old song. But Kid Cudi was in that movie, Silent Night.
The Lonely Detective. Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be really well.
There was lots of doves in Silent Night.
He did just do a song for Sonic the
Hedgehog. Did you say there were a lot of doves in Silent Night? John Woo making his way in. John Woo, he loves the doves in Silent Night. Night.
Completely.
Welcome back, Christian.
And Kinnaman, he likes his cinnamon at night.
We're nailing it. This is it. I'm definitely sold on this movie. It's going to be incredible.
I don't want to see any other version now.
Yeah, this is it. Craig Robinson has a new TV series that is coming out this Thursday to Peacock, and it's called Killing It, similar to what we were just doing with our bits here.
Oh, that's exactly what
so good.
I'm in so much pain right now.
I'm sorry. I am sincerely sorry about that.
Okay.
So along with Craig Robinson, we have Stephanie Nogueras, Claudia O'Doherty, Rel Battle, Scott MacArthur, Wyatt Walter, and Jet Miller. And Robinson stars as Craig, who is a man who will do anything to make his American dream come true, even compete in a state-sponsored python hunt. This show looks absolutely ridiculous, but Craig Robinson tends to be a joy and hilarious in pretty much everything I've seen him in. I think he definitely has what it takes to carry a show. And the trailer for this looked pretty good. As someone who, we all live in Florida, grew up in Florida, and down south, there's a python problem. So this may be based on something real. These are non-native species that are kind of flourishing and eating all sorts of animals that wouldn't otherwise be hunted by them. So state-sponsored pythons are near and dear to our crazy Florida man hearts. Are you guys fans of Craig Robinson? This is also by the team that Dan Gore and Luke Del Tradici, who are co-showrunners, who were some of the lead producers and showrunners on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I know, Chris, you have seen all of, and it just relatively recently ended. So how do you feel about this news?
I'm excited. I really like Craig Robinson as a comedian. I think he's I'm excited, funny dude. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited, dude. My back. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited. That was exceptional, and it completely summed up all my feelings about Killing It. I don't know what's left to be said, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, this show looks to be really funny, and the premise is so fucking ridiculous. I'm happy to see that Craig Robinson is getting a show for himself. You don't see him in leading roles very often, so I think this is great for his career.
And I think you finally gave in and subscribed to Peacock. Is this? No, accurate?
I finally gave in and subscribed to Paramount Plus.
Oh, the different P service. Yes.
So many.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the different P service,
which I'll be talking about later.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So yeah, that's Killing It. That'll be on Peacock starting this Thursday. We've also got Outer Range coming to Prime Video. So the premise of this show, Royal Abbott, a Wyoming rancher, becomes involved in a supernatural mystery following the arrival of Autumn, a drifter with a connection to Abbott's ranch. When I first saw this, I thought this was kind of like maybe a spin-off of Yellowstone or something. And then having watched the trailer, I'm like, okay, wait, no, this is something entirely different. So it's a mystery thriller created by Brian Watkins, and it'll be 8 episodes long. It stars Josh Brolin, which is kind of a selling point for me, Lily Taylor, Tamara Podemski, Tom Pelfrey, Imogen Poots, and many more. And yeah, it looks like very much in the vein almost of Nope, the Jordan Peele movie that's coming out. Definitely some supernatural vibes in the middle of nowhere, but also kind of like rural lifestyle sort of thing. I hadn't heard about this show before, but it's coming to Amazon Prime and looked kind of interesting. So that's Outer Range. That'll be on Prime Video.
I hadn't
Friday.
heard of this either, but I saw Josh Brolin on Hot Ones. He's on the season finale of Hot Ones, which is a great
episode.
Nice.
And I was just reminded how cool of a dude Josh Brolin is. He also crushes those hot wings without much issue. He's quite a champ. And he just he reiterated what I've always done about him, which is like any project he's interested in is probably worth checking out. Like very, very very, very interesting choices he makes as an actor. And so this is actually one rare Amazon Prime show, other than Marvelous Miss Maisel, which I watch with my fiance, which I do enjoy, and I know people have some of their favorites there. But this seems like a really, really interesting project. I'm excited to check it out.
That's Outer Range. It'll be on Prime Video this Friday. Something that's coming to Apple TV Plus this Friday as well. We've got a new anthology series called Roar that's based on a book of short stories by Cecilia Ahern. It's a genre-bending anthology series that weaves together 8 darkly comedic feminist fables that take unexpected approaches to subjects like gender roles, autonomy, and identity. So this is from creators Liz Flayhive and Carly Mensch, who are the creators of the show Glow, which I haven't seen, but I've heard is very good. And it stars, it's anthology, so I think most of these people are only in one episode. Nicole Kidman, Cynthia Erivo, Merritt Weaver, Alison Brie, Betty Gilpin, Mira Sayal, Fievel Stewart, Kara Hayward, and Issa Rae. Lots of big names here. This show, the trailer is, I wasn't expecting it to be kind of as out there as it ultimately looks. It looks kind of quirky and very interesting, actually, and the sort of thing that you could probably pick up a random episode, maybe once it airs, look online, see which ones are supposed to be the best episodes of the series. But definitely looks interesting and is coming to Apple TV Plus this Friday. That's Roar, the 8-episode anthology series.
I'll just say this really quickly.
Katy Perry isn't in this show? Katy Perry?
Katy Perry is not in this show.
Oh, just thought I should...
Yeah.
I was just going to say really quickly.
It took me too long to get the joke.
Oh, I got you. Where's that damn harmonica? Bring it back. Anyway, super quickly so you can move on, Brian. Based on the trailer, it looks like it might be leaning into some like Twilight Zone vibes, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Continue. That's all I wanted to say.
No, it definitely, yeah. Originally from hearing what it was, I wasn't expecting it to be kind of like out there, but it definitely does look that way. So moving to some movies that are coming out this week. This Friday, we've got Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, which is the 3rd movie in the Fantastic Beasts trilogy, which has gone through many iterations of casting due to a bunch of issues outside of the movie themselves. This is directed by David Yates and from a screenplay by J.K. Rowling and Steve Kloves. And the ensemble cast includes Eddie Redmayne, Jude Law, Ezra Miller, Dan Fogler, Alison Sudol, and many more. Mads Mikkelsen coming in as well as a replacement character, I believe. I haven't seen any of these movies, so I can't really speak to them. I think I may have seen like the first half hour of the first movie, and I thought it was fine, but I put it down and never came back to it. Chris, I believe you've seen both of these movies. Are you excited for this one? The trailer actually looks pretty good.
It does. You know, Brian, I'm kind of torn when it comes to this addendum to the Potter franchise. Because, you know, I saw the first two in theaters. The second one wasn't as good as the first one. And for God's sake, this whole franchise just has so much problematic press surrounding it. And it seems to be building. First, we had all the anti-trans tweets from J.K. Rowling, and then all that shit with Johnny Depp. And now, you know, him getting replaced with Mads Mikkelsen for this film. And now Ezra Miller just got arrested. So it's like, what's the point anymore? Like, there's so much bad blood surrounding everyone involved in this production, and the movies aren't even that great. I'm just going to be honest. I'm a big Potter fan. I have a fucking sword of Gryffindor behind me in my office. Like, why? Why are they even still doing this? And I can answer that question. It's because of the money. But, like, I think maybe an even better question at this point is how? How are they still getting away with making these movies, and how are they going to proceed moving forward, especially considering that we just got the news that, and we're not covering it here on the podcast this week, but we just got the news that WB is kind of pausing all business deals with Ezra Miller because of their recent arrest. So yeah, I'm going to go see this movie in theaters. I don't know if it is going to do exceptionally well. Solely because of all these problematic issues. And I know me going to see in theaters is exceptionally hypocritical based on everything
all
I just said.
I assumed it was going the opposite direction. I'm sorry. I was not laughing at you. Just
I'm gonna give the franchise one more shot because the last one was so shit, and I love the Harry Potter franchise so much, but I'm curious to see if this movie is good or not, and that's really what's driving me to the theaters, and it might be what's driving a lot of people to the theaters to see this. But going forward, I mean, this spin-off franchise was supposed to be like, I think 5 to 7 films long initially is what they said when J.K. Rowling started writing these. But I don't know. I think at this point, Warner Brothers should just kind of cut their losses. You can't switch the actor that plays a character 3 movies in a row. And if they're planning on switching Ezra Miller going into the 4th one, I just don't see what the point is anymore of making these. You know, do you have any? I know, Brian, you said you haven't seen any of them, but Christian, do you have any opinion on these films?
You know, I haven't seen any of them, and I know all the controversy around J.K. Rowling. Who just continues to just double down. I give her credit for at least having a viewpoint of like, my foot's in the sand. Like, I'm not moving. This is what.
But it's a fucked up viewpoint.
You know, certainly a lot of people have issues with it. You know, she's not a very popular woman, that's for sure. Yeah, and it sucks that, you know, you're like, why do people keep seeing this movie? I have a $400 replica of a sword from the franchise.
I know it's ridiculous and hypocritical, and I'm sorry.
I mean, the same thing's going on with the video game of like certain press journalists that are like, I won't cover the video game because of my disagreements with the author.
But the publisher making the game has stated multiple times that J.K. Rowling had no involvement in the game. And that doesn't mean that she might not be getting a kickback. It's her fucking universe, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's so... The whole thing is kind of tainted and icky, and it makes me sad.
Yeah. I'm surprised at the passion in which the creator has her view. Because you think, when you're not engrossed in all this, I'm not a Harry Potter fan. You know, when it comes to the trans community, you know, that's a community that needs all our love and support and shouldn't face a lot of shame or any kind of political anger. And that's where my stand is, not just make it clear. But yeah, first, it's for someone to devote their life to that mindset. I'm just not into Harry Potter, so I don't have this conflict. But it's so strange. A series that's not really filled with much of that rhetoric, and for that person to be so centered around that in their life, so it's very strange. It's just very weird. And it sucks. People love that. They're so attached to that franchise that it must suck if they hold different viewpoints.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those conversations that we've talked about multiple times here on the show, which is like, at what point do you separate creators' personal lives from the art that they create and how that art impacts individuals on a personal level? Because Harry Potter has done a lot for its fans over the last 20 years, but she's
like sometimes
just
that's
revealed herself to be kind of a terrible person.
Well, it's that she, I've made my point about where I stand with that stuff. She has a viewpoint and she's just very vocal about it. And it's just different than a lot of young people's viewpoints, a lot of progressive people's viewpoints, right? And it's just so weird that like, it's a weird thing. We're separating the art for the artist. Like, they did a bad thing. We learned about it. We're all trying to move on. That person's trying to heal. This is like, I disagree fundamentally with a very up and coming way of thinking about different people's perspectives, and I'm just going to draw a line in the sand, and I'm going to continue to be very vocal about that line in the sand. And I think that's different than you did a bad thing and we're all trying to move, like the fans are trying to move on, the artist is trying to move on. This is like a fundamental disagreement about a very hot button issue that I do believe there's, as someone who knows trans people, there's a lot of nuance. There is nuance to it. There is conversation to have. There are some things that she has said that I'm like, that's not totally crazy, but you're definitely not going about it the right way, which I know is a bold thing to say. I'm sorry. There is things she stands for, and it's really, but it's such a weird thing, because I do think it is different than the you did a bad thing, we're moving on. It's the you continue to just do a thing that a lot of your fan base just completely thinks is cuckoo old school ways of thinking. So anyway, I'll drop it there because obviously a lot more to be said about that. But Brian, are you excited? Is this the one you're going to check out? I know you haven't seen any of them.
He's going to jump in on the third installment without knowing anything about the prior.
I don't think so, unfortunately. But
I will say this before we move on. I'm sorry we've spoken so long about this, Brian, and I'm not trying to backpedal, but you guys have made very good points. We have a lot to see over the course of the next couple weeks, and there are films that are coming out in theaters that we need to see. The chances of me not actually seeing this in theaters, and I know it's not for the right reason, not because I'm boycotting or anything, but solely because there's so many other things that have to be done, are probably pretty high. That doesn't make me not seeing it, for the right reasons, right? Like, I've actively boycotted Morbius, which Brian is going to talk about later in the show. But anyway, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
So that is the not at all controversial Fantastic Beasts: The Secret of Dumbledore. That'll be in theaters this Friday. I'm boycotting it because I hate Beast.
I just hate Beast. I have a problem with them. I think they're disgusting.
I just like terrible, disgusting beasts. The fantastic ones, not for me.
I was into X-Men, the movie series, and then they introduced a character named Beast, and I was like, that's it? No.
How dare them?
0 stars.
0 stars.
So the last movie that's coming out this week is coming straight to Netflix. So you can watch this one on your Sofaplex. We have Choose or Die coming to Netflix. This follows Kayla, a broke college student who decides to play an obscure 1980s survival computer game in pursuit of an unclaimed $100,000 prize. After a series of unexpectedly terrifying moments, she soon realizes she's no longer playing for the money, but for her own life.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. This movie looks like classic bonkers madness.
So late.
That was Kayla fighting for her life. I really like this conceptually. I listened to a podcast called Rabbits that was kind of about like a real world augmented reality game that feels kind of similar to this, where you're tracking down clues in the real world. I feel like this is going to play into that same genre of fiction, and it's going to be on Netflix. So I'm hoping this one's good. It looked like an interesting premise. And this is directed by Toby Meekins in his feature directorial debut, and stars Asa Butterfield, Iola Evans, Eddie Marsan, and Robert Englund. Written by Simon Allen. Not a lot of people I'd heard of outside of Robert Englund, obviously famously played Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, so classic horror icon who is going to be in this one in some capacity. But that's Choose or Die. That'll be on Netflix this Friday. So
and this doesn't have an interactive element to it.
It doesn't, although it seems like something that would
they were
would be
doing
a
that.
candidate
And they've been
for
talking
that,
about how they're going to integrate all this stuff, and to have a series like a film called Choose or Die, and there's no interactive element. I'm like,
missed opportunity.
well, pick a different title.
This is the secondary title. It was formerly going to be described or called Cursor with a greater than sign.
It's going to be called Netflix the Game.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic interactive media, and where to find it right here. Click on this for fantastic interactive media in which you will choose answers for our protagonist, the movie. Anyway,
Choose or up the subscription price. Netflix
turns out you don't have a choice.
So yeah, that's a Choose or Die. That'll be coming to Netflix this Friday.
Brian, way to keep it wacky and light. We didn't cover anything controversial. And I'm sure the way that I phrased things was perfect, and no one will have any comments. When you said you hope it's good, I hope it's bad. I don't know.
Ouch.
I'm just an anarchist like that. That's the kind of energy that I bring to the table. All right, let's move on into a section I've been missing. I'm sure our loyal listeners have. It's what we've been consuming with our Quick Hits. Quick Hits is that special part of the program where we talk about what we've been consuming in the world of pop culture. I'm our special returning host, so I'm going to go first, boys. And I promise to be relatively brief, although I do have a lot of... I'm very passionate about the things I'll be talking about, but again, I'll try to keep it brief. So there's a lot of stuff I've been consuming over the past few weeks. One of the most important things that I did was during the delivery process, which was very long. I was in the hospital for like 7 days when my fiance was giving birth. So I planned for this. I had told the boys, I'm buying Metroid Dread and I'm going to play it. This is going to be the game I play. It was going to be like Marvel's Midnight Suns, but that got delayed. So I was like, you know what? I got the Switch. I'm historically not the biggest fan of the Switch, listeners may know. But really being very weak, being very tired in a hospital, being very confused. The Switch is creme de la crop for this situation of just needing something that's very light, which when you're really tired and you're holding a console above your face, man, it is the lightest thing in the world. So, kudos to it there. When I was playing Metroid Dread, this came out not too long ago, towards the end of the year, October of 2021. And this is the first side-scrolling Metroid game, if I'm not mistaken, since Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, which I'm not a huge fan of the Metroid series. I haven't played Prime. That was in a first-person perspective and was very popular in the GameCube. There's a few installments for that. I had just played the Game Boy Advance one, and I've dipped into Super Metroid on my SNES Classic that I have, but I haven't finished it. But Fusion was one of my favorite games for the Game Boy Advance. I love that. And it's people use Metroid games as a genre-defining aspect of how the game mechanically works. When they talk about Metroidvanias, mixed between Castlevania and Metroid, it's such a defining series. And Mercury Steam is the developer with Nintendo. And they've been working on this. It's been teased for a while. It was highly anticipated side-scrolling Metroid game. And wow, it's such a breath of fresh air, but also a classic game. And essentially, these games are action-adventure games where you run around. And it's very inspired by Alien, where you're on a ship. And this is all 2D plane, but it's in 3D. Absolutely gorgeous, creepy environments. Again, inspired by 80s films like Alien and stuff. And this really carries that through in the series. Just working on such garbage hardware, but being able to produce really beautiful, deep visuals with such artistic style show that even on garbage shit old hardware when it came out, you can still, if you optimize the software and you work really hard to tighten it up, you can really deliver quite a gorgeous thing. My only sad thing is I do think that if this was upscaled into 4K on a big screen TV, I think it would look absolutely gorgeous. It's got such great vision for it. It's classic video game mechanics of you run around, you see a lot of secrets you can't get to. As you progress through the platforming and through the puzzle solving, you get equipment that lets you go back to those areas. It's a very tried and true thing. They add an element of when you're sneaking through a Samus and you've lost all your powers and stuff, there's an extra added element of going through these zones where a boss can one-hit kill you in these zones where there's like these security forces. And that sounds like the worst thing in video games where you're like, and this boss chases you around, one hit kills you. And it's like, that sounds like the opposite of fun. That's not sound like a good time, but it happens so infrequently. Each encounter is special in its own way. They're not terribly challenging. The reload times for when you fail it and the save points are so quick and it's so painless that it's really not that big of a deal. And it adds an extra layer to these games that they haven't had before. It's a true masterclass in old school video game development that I really appreciate. And it goes to show there's still so much room in these old school conventions of platforming, even side scrolling, that is yet to be untapped artistic ways that you can bring to life an environment, game mechanics in a way that's fresh, even though it's such an old concept, and in a way that I don't think you could capture in a third-person type of platforming game. Like it's still showing that this medium is ripe for innovation and beauty, and I really appreciate the hell out of it. And it wasn't just because I was tired and enjoyed the birth of my son, and it was my only gaming that I did. I truly loved it. I have not beat the last boss. He's too fucking hard, and I may never beat the last boss in this game. It is the biggest difficulty spike I've experienced since the next game I'll talk about. And wow, that's okay. There's a really great story moment that happens before it. I may just watch a cutscene. It's honestly just too difficult, or I'll have to actually look up a video, which I try to avoid, of how to beat the last boss, because he's that difficult. He kind of requires that you use everything you've learned, but at just such an accelerated rate where you could cheese around some stuff. You didn't have to be perfect, and you could get the bosses up until that point that are really well designed with a mechanic that you learn after playing it a few times. This boss is like 8 mechanics happening at once that shifts, and I've only gotten to like the second stage of the fight, and I spent like 45 minutes on it, and I was like, I gotta go take care of my kid. I don't have time for this kind of horse shit anymore. So yeah, Chris, have you heard anything about this? Are you at all interested in picking this up? I know you're not the biggest Metroid fan, but anything that I'm saying is convincing you that this is a worthwhile endeavor. You're the Nintendo Switch fan. You're a Nintendo fan. Have you gotten a chance to see any footage from this, or what are your thoughts?
I've seen a ton of footage from this game, and I've only heard great things about it. I'm just not, a giant, like you said, a giant Metroid fan or fan of the franchise. I've really only played a little bit of a couple of them. I used to have Metroid Prime for the Wii, but I never have really played any like classic Metroid game. But this game has been getting so much praise that there have been a couple of times where I have considered picking it up. So it might be a pickup in the future to play. Just this one specifically. I have the Switch OLED. My wife got it for me for Christmas. So I feel like the game would look really good in handheld mode. Yeah. So yeah, for those reasons alone, I might still pick this up.
Yeah, and it's relatively difficult. I will say it's not the hardest game in the world, except for the final boss. I think the final boss is like Cuphead levels of what the fuck. This game went from 0 to 1,000 really quick. There is a easier difficulty mode, which I appreciate. That probably makes the experience a lot easier. So I think that would be. I think that's the way I'd recommend you play it, because if I'm into the challenge, if you're not, then I would lower the difficulty, because it isn't baseline modern game hard. It's like old school kind of game hard. But it's not terribly difficult. Again,
like Mega Man hard.
It's not Mega Man hard, no. But that's a whole nother way. What is Mega Man hard is the next game I'll talk about. But final thoughts: Metroid Dread, can't recommend it. It's sad that Nintendo doesn't do deals. This game will never go on sale. It'll be $60 for probably the next 5 years, which sucks, because I think it is worth the 60. I actually do. I will say, even a side scroller, it is so well made, so lovingly made, so much stuff to it that I think it is fully worth the $60. I can understand if you're not a fan waiting for a sale, but it just sucks that it never be on sale, and it's confined to anybody that wants to play, can't play it on PC, which again, it's kind of a bummer. But nothing but good things to say about it, other than the just kind of odd difficulty spike towards the end. Metroid Dread. If you have a Nintendo Switch, you're into side scrollers, you want to play a classic game, but you want kind of a newer spin on it, this is it, bread and butter. That leads me to my next game, which is Tunic. Now, have either of you heard of Tunic before I brought it up? Did any of you get a chance to check the trailer out?
I have.
Yeah, this is getting a lot of hype, and this is a good like plug for Xbox Game Pass. One of those games that would be hard to spend $40, $60 on, but being part of a subscription, this is just the perfect Game Pass game, and it gives me that, oh, good, my $15 or whatever is well spent having this service because of games like this. It is exclusive to Xbox on consoles, but I believe there's no reason this game couldn't run at a very much lower resolution on the Switch. It actually is, for as simple as it looks. I think that they could get it to run on the Switch, but it also is available PC and Mac OS, which is like, what? Game available for Mac OS? So if you've got one of those brand new MacBooks and you want to, stretch your GPU out, I think this would be a great game if you don't have Xbox to get. So Tunic is actually a really fun story. It's one of those. It was developed by one guy, a Canadian developer named Andrew Scholes, and published by Finji. There was a lot of post-production work that I believe the publisher was able to get him help on, as far as polish and game testing, as well as music and stuff. So there was a lot of additional help, but really labor of love video game for the last 8 years for this indie developer. And it's magical. To give you an idea, it's an isometric, meaning top down. When you start playing it, you immediately think of Legend of Zelda. You immediately think of games like that. But really, I believe, is so uniquely itself, taking from several different games. You find that the combat system is surprisingly deep for the art style. Again, all this is top down. And the coolest mechanic of the game is that it doesn't tell you shit about how to play it. And that's its unique charm, is that what you do is you start to find instruction booklets for a game manual, an in-game game manual. But the language is in a cryptic language. But there are little handwritten notes, and some things are written in English, and it's a lot of pictures of things happening. So what you find as you play through the game, and there is kind of an A to B story that you just have to stumble upon as you learn the mechanics, is that your character can do and unlock so many things if you just have the knowledge at the start of the game. So your second playthrough, you immediately are like, I can go here and do this and cut through this and immediately like take a shortcut and grab this. Like, if you just have the knowledge, the game's possibilities are really open. And it's a fixed view. And what they do is they hide so many secrets around running off camera, running to the side, and going down a staircase. And there's so many little secrets and little items you can find. And the art style is really cohesive, and it's simple, but it's got great lighting. Like, most of the engine's power, most of the power being pulled from a system will be on the lighting engine. And that's the one thing that makes it really modern. But other than that, it's like kind of like animated, kind of clay, bubbly characters, and it's surprisingly deep. It's a really cool concept with finding the different pages. And then, not to give too many things away, but the entire game is kind of this kind of Ready Player One micro mystery of how to get the secret ending, because you finally get at the towards the end, this is minor spoilers, not too much, but you get a page that says A, like ending, and one has A, and it's like beat the last boss. And that's kind of a little bit of an unsatisfying ending, as you can imagine, because there's a B ending, which is it just shows a figure holding a book. And this is really something that only a community can figure out. And they have cracked it already. But it was really cool because it's just YouTubers being like, hey, I found this, and collaborating and finding the secret button presses to unlock a thing, to get this thing, to unlock the secret ending, which was done by a bunch of people playing the game for the first time and actually learning from each other, because there's so many little mysteries in the game. It's really great. Thank God there's a mode. What you wouldn't expect from this game is that the combat can be very difficult and the bosses are really hard. Think Metroid, like what I said with Metroid Dread, but actually it hits it a lot sooner with a lot of the early bosses. And that's okay. Actually, I fought through, and it's difficult. It's actually, I think it's more difficult than Metroid Dread throughout. And it's a little frustrating. I think it's too difficult for the type of game it is. But it's okay, because it does have options where you can not die. And there's an easier mode where you don't run out of stamina, which is how you like dodge out of the way. So there's two options that if you just want to play through it and you get frustrated, just flip those on. And I didn't find the need to do that. I struggled through. I wanted to beat it. It was that engrossing. And there's a point of pride where it's like, I'm not going to turn those options on. Inexplicably, towards the end of the game, the back third of the game, it flips a mechanic where it makes you much weaker for later to middle part of the game for no reason other than to piss you the fuck off. And I found that it was cruel. It was cruel in a section I had to beat. But I love the game so much that I did have a respect for my time, and I turned off the difficult. I literally made myself invincible, played through the main line, and then continued to watch people explore the hidden ending, enjoying that with the community, but not actually doing it myself. So there's a layer of like, it just became cruel at one point for a game that would, if you're going to focus on discovery, do that, but to add in this like Dark Souls level difficulty spike.
Yeah, they wanted the players to earn it.
Of like, and good players could do it, and there was a way that I could get good, and I just didn't. To me, it wasn't the rub wasn't worth the cheese. Is that the phrase? The itch
wasn't worth the squeeze.
That's the one that sounds way more accurate. At the end of the day, the juice was not worth the squeeze because it literally made it so, you know, as you're going through, you find a way to get more powerful so you can take more hits. And towards the end of the game, it takes away all those gains you made and makes you go through like an 8-round gauntlet. And you really can only take like 3 hits in an encounter or you're dead. And it goes from your character had built up to take more hits and you're more comfortable. You're facing more enemies, but it's okay. I'm stronger. All those RPG elements. And then they strip it away and make you go through a really frustrating part of the game where it's like, and if it's going to take you 30 minutes to do. And if you fuck up at minute 25, you have to start over. And it's such a beautiful game, and just to have kind of a cruel difficulty spike like that. But I think ultimately the publisher must have reached an agreement where it's like, you have to make your game easier because we're trying to sell it and we want people to play it. And he was like, no, it must be this hard. And they're like, can you just put a button that makes you invincible? And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. And I flipped the button. I did. I caved. I was like, I don't have time. I don't have time to go through this 30-minute mission. So other than that, it's interesting because it's like these old games that have this nostalgic feel between Tunic and Metroid Dread that are so beautiful, but their insane need to be hard for I think little reason. Like, again, the ending boss of Metroid in this one, it's like, why did you inexplicably become cruel? And then, you know, Chris, Brian, you know what I remembered? Those Sega Genesis games, those Nintendo games, I didn't beat a lot of them because they were they were like the arcade model. It was like they were absurdly hard. And then I was like, no, this is kind of an homage to like old school gaming, which is like, yeah, it's all we can tell you is it's possible. You know? So like part of me is like, hey, this is just, maybe I was just never that good at games and that's why I'm not a professional gamer. But all that being said, there's options in both games to probably get through a lot easier. Definitely in Tunic. I'm not sure what the difficulty change in Dread does, but 2 games that made me feel like a kid playing games again. 2 games I highly recommend purchasing, even if you don't have Game Pass. If you've been playing games for your whole life and you're like 30 something, I think both games unlock a nostalgic way games have been made and make improvements on it. Super magical. I didn't go too long, did I? What was that? 20 minutes on gaming? Christian's back, everybody. Booyah! Metroid Dread and Tunic. Hopefully those are good recommendations if you're into that.
Based on what you said, it sounds like Tunic is like not a spiritual sequel, but it sounds like it pulls a lot from the original Legend of Zelda. You know, that original Legend of Zelda game was about community and discovering secrets and talking to other players and like kind of figuring out how to beat the game. And just based on the fact that the game is called Tunic, I can imagine that the creators of this game are probably big Legend of Zelda fans.
Do you ever play Link to the Past though? And you're like on Gandalf, the last boss. Did you ever beat that?
I have not beaten Link to the Past, no.
Right, because you hit a moment where like there was too many things on screen coming at Link, and they like, it's not like a modern Zelda. Because I beat Breath of the Wild pretty easily. I don't think I actually died on the last boss on Legend of Zelda. On my first run, I think I beat Gandalf first run, and that's not to brag. Gandalf, fucking name.
Or Ganon.
Fly with wings, you fool. That's a fucking name. You know, I like that. I played through. I got good enough of the game. The game scaled up, and I beat Ganondorf on the first run. The old Ocarina of Time. I think my 3rd or 5th try as a young adult, I beat Ganondorf. 3rd or 5th try.
Ocarina of Time is drastically different than the original Zelda, though. It's more linear than the original Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, Link to the Past
are two very different games mechanically.
Sure,
Link to the Past is similar to the Legend of Zelda, but again, starting to move into that more linear game design.
Yeah, this definitely takes a non-linear approach to it. It's really reward. It gives you moments of joy and discovery. Both games do, I think, but Tunic in particular is particularly interesting. But yeah, that's Tunic, available on Xbox, Mac OS, Game Pass. It's a part of that. So if you have it, please check it out. You're into games, just do that. And Metroid Dread, I do think $60 seems steep for a side-scrolling action platformer in 2022, but when it's made by probably some of the best people that can do it, it's worth it. Cool. Let's move on into Chris. You had a very special old rendezvous with an old favorite, with an old flame.
I did. So I've been speaking on the podcast the last couple weeks about Paramount Plus and shows like Halo and the offer coming out, and how they are definitely going to get my money soon because I want to see all these things. But where they truly succeeded in finally hooking me was releasing the new Star Trek The Motion Picture, the Director's Edition, in 4K. And the reason this is so impressive and exciting is because, and I just want to say up front, I'm by no means a Star Trek super fan. I would consider myself a casual Star Trek fan, in that I've only seen the original series, I've seen Next Generation, and I've seen most of the movies. But outside of that, I really haven't consumed a lot of other Star Trek media. And as I mentioned, the reason this is so exciting and important is because Star Trek The Motion Picture has had a really difficult uphill climb since its inception. And that is, it came out in 1979 and was about 10 years after the cancellation of the original series. Initially, it was supposed to be a straight-to-television film. But with the success of Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1977, Paramount went, make it a movie. So with a very small budget, it kind of began this difficult battle of coming to fruition. When it was originally released in theaters, it technically wasn't a completed film. They had taken like 4 days to do color grading, which typically takes weeks, if not months. Everything was just very rushed. The special effects didn't feel up to par to what they could have been. There were a lot of continuity issues with the film. So for a very long time, it existed in this kind of like unfinished state. To top it all off, having just seen Star Wars, fans felt this movie was kind of slow in terms of like showing space sequences and ships. In the fandom, it has been called Star Trek The Motionless Picture, which is kind of pretty rough. But
and Chris, just to interject, the cinematic height, a lot of fans say is Wrath of Khan, which I have seen. That's like
correct, which is the second Star Trek film,
yeah.
Right? Like that for fans is like the peak of Star Trek cinema, basically. So the movie that came after this, and the reason I think that movie was so successful, and this is kind of a small digression here, is because it kind of leaned away a little bit from what Gene Roddenberry's initial vision was. Star Trek The Motion Picture, and one of the reasons why I like this so much, and I'm happy that this new edition is finally out, and I'll explain why, is because it seems to be the most Roddenberry-esque of all the films. It is very philosophical in nature, and that's one of the draws to the original Star Trek series. It's a thinking man's science fiction show, that children can also enjoy. A lot of college students really like this show, for that reason. So anyway. Sorry about that digression. In 2001, Paramount finally decided to release a director's edition of Star Trek The Motion Picture on DVD, where they did a recut. They tried to add some new matte paintings and some CGI effects for the time. Imagine CGI in 2001. It was still better than kind of what they had in the original film. But the problem with this release is that being on DVD, Paramount really didn't think too highly of the cut, and it has become increasingly harder to find for the last, 21 years. It is very difficult to get the director's edition on DVD at this point in time. However, with the release of Paramount Plus, similar to Warner Brothers saying release the Snyder cut of Justice League, Paramount has taken this opportunity to take Star Trek The Motion Picture and
release
basically
the Shatner cut.
basically complete it. Thank God it's not the Shatner cut, but basically complete this movie. They've redone the color grading. They've added better CG effects to the film. They have fixed all the continuity issues that were in this movie. And I have to say, you know, I've only seen the original, the theatrical cut of the film. I never saw that 2001 director's edition. And all I can say is fuck, man. Like, watching this movie in 4K was an amazing experience. Like, it's such a good science fiction movie, and I'm so happy that the movie is finally like complete. You know, after 40 years, it has finally become what Robert Wise, who has since passed, wanted this movie to be. And, you know, I jokingly said to Brian and Christian when I was talking about how hyped I was to watch this movie and I was finally giving my money to Paramount Plus, that Star Trek: The Motion Picture is really a movie that is, if Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey had a baby, that would be what Star Trek: The Motion Picture
Chris,
is.
that's a great reference to our first ever episode, which we just,
I know, our first episode of Pop-O-Holics, so we talked about Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Directly,
but we didn't talk about Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Chris, would you recommend this as someone who's just? I've seen a couple Star Trek. I've seen I've seen the new action ones. Okay,
which I have. If you are expecting that from this movie, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Of course, of course, it's more old school. And I've seen lots. I've seen God, how do I put this? There was a period of my time where I watched a lot of older Next Generation. I've seen more Next Generation, but I have seen Wrath of Khan, and I've seen at least 5 to 7 Star Trek episodes, which I enjoyed for what they were. Right, they're very much like kind of Doctor Who-y, but a little more up my alley than Doctor Who as far as watching classic sci-fi television. You know, is this a very approachable thing to just jump in, not having to remember, you know, everybody's roles and everything? What do you think?
So that's a great question. Brian and I actually had this conversation off air a couple of nights ago because I thought that Brian would actually really enjoy this movie, and Brian hasn't seen any of Star Trek, the original series. So I think that you don't need a deep understanding of Star Trek lore or a sense of the characters to appreciate the themes of this film. This is a movie about human experience and what it means to be human. You know, those typical philosophical themes that Star Trek has always really enjoyed exploring. But there are beats that will affect you differently if you are in love with these characters and if you are familiar with the original series and kind of this journey that these characters have gone on. But I think overall, you can watch this as a standalone science fiction film and get something out of it. I just want viewers to be warned that this is not the J.J. Abrams 2009 Star Trek. That is like the furthest from what Gene Roddenberry's initial vision of what Star Trek was supposed to be is. So if you're a fan of those movies and those are totally different type of entity and you want a lot of action out of your science fiction, this isn't for you. I wouldn't subject you to this. But if you are a fan of science fiction that makes you think, and it's not quite as deep as 2001, A Space Odyssey, but I think there's a lot to love about this film. And like I said, I'm just so happy that it's finally getting the respect that it deserves. A physical release is coming out in September. So if you don't want to subscribe to Paramount Plus at this point in time and watch it on the streaming service, in September, you can actually pick up a Blu-ray or 4K copy of this. And there's supposed to be a ton of new special features, hopefully kind of going over the restoration process for the 4K transfer. But yeah, I have to say, like, not totally enjoying Star Trek: The Motion Picture when I saw that theatrical cut maybe a decade ago. I am fucking in love with this movie, and I'm again so happy that it finally is what it's supposed to be.
You know, I am super excited to check this out. I just wanted to shout out, Chris, you told us that they're going to do 4 or 5 days of screenings of this at the end of the month. I think starting on the 22nd or the 23rd
of May.
Of next month. So yeah, stay on the lookout for that at your local theaters if you're trying to check that out. I am definitely planning on seeing it then.
I too am going to try to meet up with Brian and see in theaters because I think it would be an awesome experience.
Yeah, Paramount Plus. You know, this might be something I'll have to knock out during my wait till Halo is done, wait till Top Gun Mavericks is on it, like that perfect timing of I'm going to watch all this stuff that's going to be on it, and then
you have The Offer coming out.
Bail. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. It's also MacGruber, right? So this is enough on
True, right?
Jackass Forever is currently on the platform, so I'm excited to watch that. Totally opposite of what Star Trek the motion picture is presenting here, but
No, I think there's
some good stuff.
Yeah.
My wife has been really enjoying watching NCIS. She's finally catching up on the more recent seasons of NCIS. So Paramount Plus, truth be told, has a lot of great stuff to offer at this point in time.
One has Shatner and one has Shat. All right, moving on. That's Star Trek: The Motion Picture Director's Edition 4K, available exclusively on Paramount Plus in select theaters in May. Brian, God, so I've been waiting for this. I just had to,
Oh boy,
I had to splurge my video gameness because you guys haven't had any video game talk since I've been gone. I'm like, that's what the listeners come for. They're like, I want to hear video game stuff buried in your 2-hour movie podcast. Brian, you saw Morbius.
I did. Yes.
It's not that bad, right? I haven't seen it yet, but I have a feeling it's not that bad. Where am I at? Am I right?
It's not. I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. I'll say that.
I'm really interested to hear about, and I know this is a ridiculous thing to ask Brian, considering that it's not even really part of the movie, but at the end of what you have to say about Morbius, I do want to hear what you think about those post-credit scenes. But continue.
We can't. I can't spoil.
We'll
maybe
get
off
into
mic.
it. We'll get into it a little bit, but first of all, I have to say,
doesn't exist.
Yeah. At the $2 a month tier, I went and saw this movie in IMAX. And
wait, it's showing in IMAX. I know. Listen, you haven't talked for like an hour and a half, and I've kept you on this podcast. I'm interrupting you for the third fucking time. So, well, I'm back. It's available in. Was it shot in IMAX?
From how it looked, I would say no, but I don't know if this is.
I guess
it was very
else
strange.
Playing, yeah, that is strange. I'm so sorry, but that's just such an odd.
It was in
detail.
Dolby and IMAX, actually. Yeah,
Dolby makes sense, but IMAX is very strange. But I guess it's an action movie, whatever. Anyway, tell me about.
I was in an AMC, and so I will say for the big shots, like speaking on the IMAX screen, it was very strange because a lot of it looked like it may have been actual location shots, and everything around the edges was blurry, like to the point of being distracted. I'm not usually distracted by this kind of stuff, so I think it may have been something to do with the projection, because the visual effects in this movie are largely really good, actually. I really liked the visual effects and how Morbius's powers are displayed, and even the action choreography. They do some really interesting kind of slowed down stuff, but not exactly bullet timey. It's kind of like slowed down to speed up. Christian, may not be up your alley if you're not into the I'm blanking on the director's
Sherlock
name.
Holmes films.
Yeah, the Sherlock Holmes, the Guy Ritchie bit. But yeah, I thought the action set pieces were pretty good. The final one is kind of a little it gets confusing in terms of what's actually happening. It's a bit of a mess. I went in with low expectations here. Everyone was trashing this movie. It's not a particularly good movie. If I had to give it an honest rating, it would probably be in the 45 to 50% range. Very much passable. My experience was undeniably clouded by about 40 minutes into the movie. Morbius says something like, it's a voiceover about, I've now got an insatiable craving for blood, human blood. And the power went out in the theater, and we were knocked out for 25 minutes.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, so, like
a free ticket or money back or something?
I know the line, yes, we did get free tickets after about 20 minutes. And yeah, it was very dramatic and perfect time to end the line. I was half expecting bats to fly into the theater at the point of the screen going out, but it did end up coming back. We watched the rest of the movie and saw the first post-credit scene, and it happened again during the second post-credit scene. So I actually have not seen the back half of the second post-credit scene to your question, Chris.
Oh man, how are you going to understand what's going on with Venom? And
honestly,
Venom.
It doesn't matter, though.
It doesn't matter.
From what I heard about them, what I actually like about this movie, and it's something that I know I'm a bit of a perceived hater in terms of where the MCU has gone, but this is a very standalone story. It very much is self-contained, even though it's far from a perfect movie. It rushes through a lot of character development stuff that it doesn't really flesh out, but it has a handful of cool ideas. I thought the action was pretty good, and the visual effects were quite cool. So it's not something I'd go out of my way to recommend. Say it's necessary viewing. I told you, Chris, I was hotter on Venom than a lot of people. I did prefer Venom to this movie, but I think that's partially because of how much fun Venom is. This movie has some decent jokes, and we have Tyrese Gibson and Al Madrigal playing these cops that are kind of following along and narrating the things that are happening around Morbius. And Madrigal is really funny, and Gibson's playing the straight man. So there is some good stuff, some references / jokes to MCU stuff that I enjoyed. I chuckled a few times, but yeah. I don't think this movie is quite the train wreck people are making it out to be. It's very much in that kind of old school 90s comic book movie, self-contained story. And it's fine, so I don't have all that much more to say about it, but I was happy. I definitely didn't regret seeing it, especially getting a free movie ticket out of it as well. And I didn't leave the Northman after the 25-minute wait, so it was good enough to stay and wait. Yeah, use it for the Northman. Exactly. Right. But Morbius.
I got a follow-up question. Jared Leto has had some highs and lows in his career. Notoriously difficult to work with on set because he has a comical idea of what method acting is. Kind of an all over the place guy.
Have you heard about the situation for this one?
I believe he made people wheelchair him because he refused to walk because he was mimicking the.
So he didn't make people wheelchair him. He was using his crutches and taking like 45 minutes to walk to the bathroom to go pee. And so eventually they're like, okay, you can stay in character. Can we wheelchair you to get you to the bathroom faster? And he agreed to that.
See, that's how you collaborate. I don't know who's the director on this.
That's how you collaborate.
Daniel Espinosa.
Daniel Espinosa. Yeah. Can I just give all the shout outs in the world? Because all the quotes I've seen from him have handled everything so politically smart, but also just kind of real and blunt. So there's a way of like, this is the best thing you could have said, and also you said it in a very mature, but just like
we see what you're saying.
Yeah, but also not being he's not really being that big of a dick about it. But when it came to all the because this you brought up, Chris, on one of the weekly uploads, that like, oh, they edited in like references to Spider-Man that are just not in this movie. Like, spoiler alert, there's like no references to Spider-Man in the main movie, from what I understand, right, Brian? Like all those shots of all that stuff is gone. And they asked the director point blank, they're like, what's up with that? And he's like, I directed the movie. I did not direct the trailer. And he goes, the movie you see is the movie I directed. What they did in marketing was not my job. Yeah. Super blunt, super good way to handle it. I don't think it's going to piss off the studio too much to say like, listen, I just directed the movie that was up to a different department. Do I have thoughts about that? Yeah, but I directed the movie, so I'll talk to you about that, not that. So very smart. And then when asked about like difficulty working with Jared Leto, he's like, I don't know, man, everybody's got a process. He's like, everybody's got a process. We just learn to work with it. Like, what a smart answer. Just be like, yeah, like whatever floats your boat, man. Like, we just made it work. Must be like the chillest dude.
I will say, Jared Leto, not going to get into this man as a person because that is a whole just can of worms. But 50 years old, looking pretty damn jacked, not looking like a 50-year-old man.
He might be a vampire, movie. Actually.
Yeah, himself, he could be a vampire.
I'm watching him in We Crashed, which is available on Apple TV Plus. Disclosure, I work for Apple. I do not work for the TV division. And he is, it's one of the best things I've seen him in a while, probably since Blade Runner, which I think he's just not very utilized. He's not very integral to the plot. So he's not like a standout for me in that movie, but he has done good work. I do like him in Matchstick Men, which we might cover, I think, right? In Nicolas Cage month. Maybe that one got on the cutting room floor. Anyway, he's in a great Nicolas Cage movie called Matchstick Men. No, not, am I thinking Matchstick Men? I might not be thinking. Yeah, no, he plays he's in Lord of War. It's another Nick Cage movie. Sorry, Nick Cage has been a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I really like him. It's an early movie of his, and I appreciate the work he does as a singer in 30 Seconds to Mars. Very talented vocalist and performer. Not saying his character, anything like that. But he was particularly good in that, and like, where do you say his performance is? Does it stand out? Is it like, well, he's doing what he's got to do? It's pretty forgettable. What do you think about Jared Leto's performance in Morbius?
I feel like the movie is not such that it's particularly emotionally provocative. But yeah, everyone's doing fine, and there's some over the top stuff. Like Matt Smith is really like going all out. I enjoyed his performance.
Probably
quite
who
a bit.
I'm most excited about seeing, especially from seeing we did a Doctor Who month, and I liked Matt Smith as the Doctor. I thought he was very charismatic, and he would probably be him and Jared Leto. I'm interested to see face off head to head.
No, they're good. I definitely wasn't taken out by any of their performances, but yeah, it's not really the sort of movie where it's like, oh my god, incredible performances.
Thank God you had to take a wheelchair to the bathroom every time because
yeah, it definitely wasn't coming away like that.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's like doing a Cheetos commercial. It's like I only ate Cheetos for the entire week, and I lived with Cheetos to understand Chester.
I went to the Chester Cheeto compound, and things got orange.
That sounds like something else.
Chris, did you have any follow-up other than it?
I think I've ragged on Morbius enough. I'm glad Brian saw it, and I'm glad that he could give an opinion on the film for our listeners.
I love that you can find a way to say something that isn't antagonistic, even though it's meaningless, Chris. I'm happy Brian made it to the movie theater safely.
You want me to say something antagonistic?
No.
I can say something antagonistic.
No, I get you. You're just trying not to start. But
I think Sony doesn't know what the fuck they're doing with these films. I think they need to stop making standalone villain movies.
I don't
stop
think
riding the coattails of Spider-Man.
Is it a villain movie though? Because it's not.
He's not
really
actually
a villain movie.
Well, Chris,
stop making standalone Spider-Man character movies. They all suck.
I actually have a little bit different opinion on it. I think Sony has like a good formula here. David Chen of the Slash Filmcast does a box office roundup, and something that his the person that does it with him, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name.
Scott Mendelson
had pointed out was that like these films are budgeted under like half the cost of most superhero movies, right? They're not cheap movies, right, by any stretch of the imagination. They're like $60-80 million movies, Venom and Morbius, but they're kind of like in a really good sweet spot where they don't have to crush it. They just have to be relatively popular. And they've got a cast of superheroes in vogue. They've got they've got one of the best rogues galleries in comic books. Like Spider-Man's rogues gallery is incredible. A list of interesting characters that interact with
so good that they've been trying to make a Sinister Six movie for a fucking decade.
Right. Yeah. No, I get all that.
To the detriment of most of the films they've released because of it.
Sure. They're making tight movies. They're not long movies. They're not trying to be art house flicks. They're just little comic book B movies. But there's really just a market for this, and there's a way that you just like say it's again, like, how are you not like, my frustration is like, how are you not breaking from the need for this to all make sense together right off? Like, why do you need it to make sense right off the bat? You got a budget that seems to be working. You're getting decent directors. Like, give them the playground and the space, give them the character, and let them go hog shit. Let them do whatever. Clearly even though your reviews for all three of these movies have been fucking terrible, they're still making their money back and more. Like,
and the audience scores are still incredibly high.
Yeah, well, and that's what kind of sucks is that like there's a rewarding nature to this that like they won't change it, but in order to get like to actually, I think, make more money and make more of an impact on the industry is like, yes, carve out your lower budget Spider-Man rogues gallery movies and just like find cool directors and have that budget, put that marketing force behind it, and don't feel the need at this time, maybe later, don't like lose sight of the fact that you could do something like a big Avengers type thing, but don't work that hard that's the goal. Just empower artists to make like cool stories with these comic book characters, and then you've got Spider-Man in your back pocket. And when you finally hit the one movie that's like, fuck, that was like, critics and audiences agree it makes $200 million on a $90 million budget, have Spider-Man face off against, like, plan that. I don't give a shit, but like, just create a playground for artists to work. It's so strange that they found this formula. I don't think it takes much to make them more money and also not completely do dumb shit that makes fans angry. So they're on to something. They're actually pretty close. It's certainly it's certainly a more interesting take than what they did with the Amazing Spider-Man franchise and what they were trying to do there. But I for one, don't see all bad. I'm just afraid that like they, we talk about this, they won't learn the right lessons, as if that's like, we're moral dictators to these giant executives. My argument is actually, I do believe there's a market to make more money and to make more interesting films. By making
these movies are very much not breaking the barriers in a way that I think you're talking about.
And I have to agree with you, Christian. You and I want the same things, but I don't think that's the direction they're moving in. I think they had an opportunity with Morbius to make like a really cool and interesting standalone vampire movie. But in reality, they just made it a mediocre superhero movie instead, while also trying to cram
like
it.
Venom. Like Venom is crazy and it's entertaining. And it sounds like from some people that I've seen watch it, they're like, I think all the negative hype is a little too much, like the universe stuff, whatever. And I think that's where most people are like angry, but it's like they're close to like actually cracking something that's different than Marvel and bringing something new. And I think that's what's more frustrating for me is like, you're close, like you're close to doing something interesting in the space, this genre that seemingly is beaten to death.
I was talking to James Barnes, friend of the podcast, a couple of days ago, and we were texting about this after he saw Morbius. And as I mentioned, Sony's been trying to make a Sinister Six movie for over a decade at this point. And I think we're at the point when it comes to superhero cinema where, like, if they found a really interesting director who was like talented at making heist films, they could literally just make a heist movie with the
Suicide
Sinister
Squad, Rogues Gallery Spider.
Yeah, you don't have to introduce every single one of these characters in an individual movie. Like, the audience gets it. They know what superheroes are or supervillains are. Like, just make a cool heist movie. And then if you really want to put Spider-Man in it, make him the antagonist. Like, that would be such a cool film to follow this like group of supervillains who are trying to commit this heist, and Spider-Man just keeps getting in the fucking way. He doesn't even have to be the main character, appear that many times, but like, I think there's a really cool concept there, but they're so hyper focused on like trying to recreate the Marvel Studios formula where all these movies are standalone, but then there's like a merged movie. Like, just let it go, man. Like, I agree with you, Christian. Just find a talented creator, make your Sinister Six movie, lean into the genre nature of some of these characters that you have, and just do your own thing. You know?
Yeah, and you don't even have to try that hard to like be like, well, what if we want to do something and they're all like characters in the same universe? It's like, I don't know, just tell the director he can't outwardly say, the main character can't say, well, Venom doesn't exist in this universe.
Right.
Like, that's the bar of like, it's a comic book thing. You can make it make sense. It's not, look what they're doing with Moon Knight. Like, there's like Egyptian lore, like mythic things happening in that they could eventually explain away, I'm sure. But like, that's the one thing about Moon Knight that I'm really appreciating, is that there's just like, it seems uncaring about what's happening.
There's very little connective tissue outside of like small Easter eggs.
Currently, I'm sure it'll disappoint me. And
speaking of Venom, though, get some Venom vibes from. I've only seen the first episode so far, but definitely a similar thing happening.
But it's not the only good thing about the show, so that'd be the difference.
Oh, definitely not. No, I really enjoyed the first episode.
Yeah, I'm caught up to episode 2, and like all MCU shows, I'm like, wow, this is my favorite one so far, and then it'll eventually be like, oh, didn't stick the landing. So we'll see if one of these MCU shows can stick the landing. Loki was close. Loki was probably the closest thing I got. Anyway, Divergent. That's Morbius. Brian says not so bad. I was hoping. I trusted you, Brian. I was like, this some I'm going to see when it's on Sony's streaming service. Sony Plus.
It's probably going to come out. It's probably going to come out to Stars or Showtime first.
Yeah, they seem to. That's where the deals are made for the Sony productions.
I would gamble that you'd be harsher on it than I'm being.
Really? I don't know.
I mean, it's not particularly good. Like,
I was not like particularly. I was not.
Brian's been kind.
Here's the thing, though, is that like Venom and Venom 2, not good movies, but they're short, and there's enough things happening that it's just like, I don't feel like it downright made me upset that I spent so much time. It's like, by the time I'm getting bored, it's over. I don't know. There's like a certain pleasure to it where it's like I can be lighter on the movies are not good, but there's this level of like, but you know, whatever. It was unimportant in a fun way of like a diversion, which some films can be. And I want Sony Rogues Gallery movies, if they're going to keep making them, just keep occupying that space of like, it's just a diversion. Just come here, have fun. Maybe there's something where we do something deeper, but don't try to like do anything more than try to make a fun movie. I don't know. I think we've said a lot on it. So we'll move on. Chris, do we have stuff to cover in community feedback?
Just Throwback Thursday really quick.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Why don't you just go into that? We'll skip the theme for now, just so we can wrap the show up.
Sure, we'll make this brief. Every Thursday on our YouTube channel, we have a Throwback Thursday episode. Currently, we're working our way through our December 2019 conversations about Star Wars. We covered all the Star Wars movies leading up to the Rise of Skywalker. And this week on our Throwback Thursday episode, we're going to be talking about the original trilogy. Last week, we talked about the prequels. So this Thursday, head over to youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics. If you're listening to this, we do have a YouTube channel. Go to that link. And make sure while you're there, you like the video, click that notification bell so you get notified about all of our future videos. And viewers, if you're already watching us on YouTube, well, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our future content. But we can't wait to see you there.
I will say, based on last week's prequels TBT, talking about these movies may be putting it a bit... not exactly like rambling about, maybe more accurate.
I don't know.
How else do you talk about Star Wars, Brian?
Chris, you had mentioned
Fair.
in our private chat that you were like laughing at some stuff that was happening in it, and that made me like want to have a communal revisit. And I don't normally revisit the older podcast. I can't stand myself. But I did re-listen to a good bit, like an hour of it, which is a record for me going back into a podcast thing. And I'm like, okay, now is about the time when we're about finding our stride. So I think it's a good thing to jump on. We do ramble quite a bit, but I remember I forgot to text you guys, but I was thinking, yeah, I'm pretty dumb and I'm not sure I'm adding much insight, but man, I am funny. And I believe at one point I call Watto the flying Jewish stereotype.
Yep.
I keep calling him Guido. And,
and then I keep correcting you. There are multiple times where I correct you in that episode.
And there's a moment where like it first happens and you go, all right, let me back up. And you explain what, you know, all the different ways that I was saying it wrong. And then you go, this is going to be a long episode. So it's
all right.
It was fun. We learned
it's
about
our fun chemistry that we have.
Chris
it's
was
representative of who we are.
Brian was in Math League. You find out a little fun fact about Brian in Math League. Him seeing Revenge of the Sith. There's a lot of nugs, a lot of golden nugs. Yeah, Brian forgot that happened in his life, but we documented.
I remembered it. I forgot I had brought it up on the episode. But yeah, no,
like, wow,
we got out of school. That was great.
Man, I gave out too much personal information about myself.
I was about to shout out my teacher. I'm like, no, let me not.
You did
in that episode.
I did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember her name.
She's great. I do.
Good. All right, gentlemen, we are covering this is Easter Eggers month. Films of Robert Eggers. Very exciting. Wednesday's episode, you should check it out. It's going to be The Witch with Susan Tekra-Kuglinska, and we're super happy. It was a super great conversation. We actually already recorded it, and it was a great first episode for me to be back on because it felt like we have an actual podcast that should be taken seriously.
Felt like old times
because she's such a great guest and she's so smart, and it was so cool having her. So
she really elevates the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing my son's gonna be proud of me. And then we got to the weekly upload, and I was like, did a bit about Sherlock Holmes overthinking.
I was gonna say a 15-minute diatribe about Sherlock Holmes cleaning a urinal with his own pee.
Incredible.
But at least I'm really funny. Yeah, that'll be it. You can follow us at we have a link tree which has a link to all the stuff we do online, and hopefully a discount coupon code for my local chiropractor. I'm in so much pain this entire episode. I hope everybody knows that. I want everybody to know I suffer for my art. It's like the character of Christian on Pop-O-Holics has a bad back, so I have to have a bad back. So I had my fiance mule kick me in my lower back so that I could get into character.
Mule method acting.
Because I'm method. I'm really method. Yeah, follow that link tree, find all the stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, we have a podcast. If you're listening on the podcast, we have a YouTube channel where you can see our faces. We do these weekly uploads on video and some of our reviews and retrospectives and stuff. Very exciting. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at TruePop-O-Holic.
Hurry, not all at once.
And you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy.
And you can find me, the host of Pop-O-Holics. I also do music, Midnight Satire, a Not So Serious Man, streaming now on your favorite streaming platforms such as Apple Music or Spotify or Tidal or Brian, what's another one?
Deezer.
Amazon Music, Google Play Music.
Overcast?
No, that's a podcast player. That's where you can subscribe to the Pop-O-Holics, my most important project.
Oh, sorry.
Gentlemen, it's good to be back. Thank you so much for welcoming me back with open arms. Chris, you did a pretty good job as host, but I think we can admit that with an average running time of 45 minutes before I came back, and now it looks like we've been recording for 6.5 hours, which is, I believe, 7 Morbiuses.
Infinitely better.
I mean, people listen to Joe Rogan talk for like 4 hours about like eating raw elk meat, so this isn't so bad.
We're cracking 305, baby. It's happening this week. I'm calling it.
It's pretty long. I can keep it going too. We don't ever have to end.